Iraq threatens to use Allied prisoners as human shields. President Bush says Saddam Hussein will be held accountable for any mistreatment. And U.S. warplanes keep up attacks despite bad weather over Iraq. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. 5 days into the Persian Gulf War, Saddam Hussein is bidding to shift the focus onto a potentially vulnerable point for Americans, prisoners of war. Iraq said it now holds more than 20 U.S. and Allied airmen. It showed some of them bruised and bewildered on television and indicated they would be used as human shields at what were described as civilian, economic, and other targets inside Iraq. President Bush said immediately that he's angry. He said Saddam Hussein had violated international law, but said it would make no difference in the conduct of the war. Allied warplanes have now flown more than 8,000 sorties against Iraq and Kuwait, but many of Saddam's Scud missile launchers are apparently still intact. For his part, President Bush said he was outraged at Iraq publicly displaying American POWs, putting words in their mouths under duress, and threatening to use them as human shields. He said this gave Saddam Hussein no psychological or military edge, but could leave Saddam open to prosecution as a war criminal. White House correspondent Wyatt Andrews has the latest. Wyatt?
Dan, it was an angry President Bush who today bitterly denounced that what he called the brutal parading of those downed pilots on television, with the White House even suggesting that Saddam and other top Iraqi leaders may now face, at some point in the future, a war crimes tribunal.
My name is Lieutenant Jeffrey Norton Zahn.
Captured pilots from 4 Allied countries, including Americans, Jeffrey Zahn, Cliff Acree, and Guy Hunter Jr., were pictured on Iraqi television along with the purported remains of one of their downed aircraft. Many of the captives were badly injured, with one British airman so bruised he wouldn't or couldn't raise his head. All of the prisoners were clearly being used for propaganda, with some appearing to reluctantly read words written for them.
I think our leaders and our people have wrongly attacked the peaceful people of Iraq.
To President Bush, this public display of prisoners and the threat to use them as human shields constitute war crimes.
It is very clear that this is a direct violation of the every convention that protects prisoners.
Chillingly, the president warned that holding Allied prisoners as human shields would not diminish the Allied attack.
This is not going to make a difference in the prosecution of the war against Saddam. It's not going to make a difference.
U.S. complaints about mistreatment of the prisoners were echoed by the International Red Cross, and the outrage was echoed in Great Britain.
There has been a reported threat to use captured airmen as human shields. Such action would be inhuman, illegal, and totally contrary to the Third Geneva Convention.
White House officials today, including the president, predicted and indeed hoped that this prisoner ploy would in fact backfire on Saddam Hussein, that it would intensify worldwide anger against him, and more to the point in the future, Dan, might diminish the chance that Saddam will emerge at the end of all this as a figure worthy of any sympathy. Dan?
Wyatt Andrews, thanks. Official U.S. anger and condemnation of Iraq for the mistreatment of POWs was delivered not only in public and in private. In the case of the top Iraqi diplomat still in Washington, it was also delivered personally. State Department correspondent Bill Plant has our report on that.
Iraq's chief diplomat in the U.S. summoned to the State Department for an expression of U.S. outrage over abuse of captive Americans shrugged off charges that Baghdad is violating the Geneva agreements on treatment of POWs.
Iraq respects all international conventions.
But Iraq's ambassador to Britain stripped away the language of diplomacy when he was asked about the POWs.
If you want to be safe,